And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the hosts of the Lord went out of the land of Egypt. It was a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This was the first night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, This is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall be no stranger eat thereof, but every man's servant that is bought for money. When thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. A foreigner and a hired servant shall not eat thereof. In one house shall it be eaten. Thou shalt not tarry forth aught of the flesh abroad of the house, neither shall ye break a bone thereof. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover of the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Thus did all the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. What does this text mean? What does it say about the ways of God? The following are a series of commentaries on the verse alone. I did my reading, so now it's your turn. This was a truly interesting commentary which puts both Old and New Testament in a slight perspective. Now, we were on verses 43 and 48, but let's go back just a few verses. Say verse 38 and on, for example. Exodus chapter 12, verse 38. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt, and could not tarry, neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel, who dwelt in Egypt, was 430 years. The mixed multitude were called Israelites. You all know what they had to eventually do in order to stay with the Israelites. I rest my case. We can see that with all of this joining in of other nations, wherever the Israelites went, it outweighed the descendants of Abraham and Isaac greatly. Heck, this rule God established not only has kept the door open for all people, but logically made up the majority of the 12 tribes of Israel 10-1. There are so many conversion stories of the other nations converting into God's covenant with the Israelites that it's astounding in every way. People of Canaan, Gibeon, Cush, Greece, Rome, Ephesus, Egypt, India, and more will be covered biblically among the peoples of these nations who converted. The Edomites did it, fulfilling a prophecy of Israel possessing the remnant of Edom in both the books of Obadiah and Amos. And now they were called Israelites. Josephus, a priest, historian, and Israelite, confirmed this very historical fact and event. In 1 Kings, the people of Cush were brought in. This is why God says, "Are not the Ethiopians children unto me also?" And serves as a record event that the Ethiopian Phalashian Jews were not descendants, but converts, which could mean that the descendants of these converts, being the so-called Negroes, and the other nations that mixed with all the other so-called Hispanics, Haitians, etc., are converts as well. If I can prove this to be true, then the entire doctrine of the original descendants of the 12 tribes list will be forced to be labeled as Gentiles, or choose to agree with what the Bible says about converts, that a stranger is just as equal as an Israelite, but will be checkmated if they do choose to accept this fact, because they must acknowledge a part of God's law that many of them hate, that any Gentiles who are circumcised and convert their lives to the covenant are on just as much equal footing as them, because they are both in the same boat. The original descendants of those 12 tribes are a rare bunch in our world. Really thin. Do the math. Okay, last thing we need to do before we go into the main parts of the series is to get some grounded root definitions of terms we will run into and have already ran into as we go all throughout the Bible. Term number 1, Jew. Term number 2, Israelite. Term number 3, proselyte. Term number 4, Christian. Now, of course, there was one that I did leave out, and that was an Israelite in a Gentile state of mind. It's a new and non-existent biblical term, nor is it found or described in any way by Jesus or his disciples in the entire Bible, nor does it match or come close to being linked to any Israelites in the Old or New Testament, and I will prove it in this video series. We now have a proper understanding of what laws, requirements, definitions, and God-given expectations that have been practiced since the beginning that have formed the true kind of Jews we see today. Let's move on to the main part of this series, my favorite part, the stories, and what God's purpose, plans, and intentions are for the parts of the world that want little to do with God, the Gentiles. We saw a part of that plan, allowing all who choose his holy covenant to be allowed into his holy covenant. But did this continue to repeat throughout the Old and New Testament? Was there more that God had in mind?